Welcome back to Partum the Mess, a podcast about humorous, inspirational, and educational experiences presented by first-time parents trying to navigate parenthood and staying sane doing it. I'm your host, Brittany, and today's guest is Eden, Cody's husband. This is episode number 7, and today we'll catch up with you and then have Eden share his thoughts and experiences being a first-time dad. I'm going to go ahead and go first. I wanted to update our listeners on something that we had talked about recently about my kids and teeth brushing. I had mentioned that the dentist had told me, or not the dentist himself, but his receptionist had said to not bring them in until they're 2 years old. But I had read that 1 is the recommendation, like when they get their first tooth. And my kids didn't start getting their first teeth until like age 1, but I thought that was strange that there was like such a difference. And I had said that I was going to ask the dentist, and I did recently. So he said actually to not even worry about bringing them in until age 3. And I thought that was really long time, but he pointed out that it's a new environment, kind of a scary environment but sometimes, and so it's helpful if they can come and watch the parents or like watch a show or something to have it be non-threatening, which made sense because every time they go to the doctor they start to cry. I think it's, other than being new, they're associating it with shots, and so if they can have a positive experience with the dentist's office and understand, then that makes sense. So I'm glad I learned that. Every dentist may have different recommendations if your child has special oral circumstances, but that's, I thought, a really good rule of thumb. How about you, Eden? Do you have anything going on?
Yeah, I think with feeding Emmett lately, Cody and I have different ways of doing it, and it's just a matter of how messy do we want things to get, So
Yep.
I tend to be like a neat freak and try to be not let them get so messy, but sometimes Cody will do it a little bit differently. So the way that I do it is obviously just strip him naked, just down to his diapers, and put him on his high chair and then let him eat. And the food that I give him, I typically will monitor, because if it's something like yogurt or something smashed up, I will kind of monitor that a little bit more closely and maybe even feed him, compared to Cody, which will kind of just put it on the table and let him go at it. And so he makes quite a mess, and sometimes I have to clean that up. So
She leaves it.
Yeah, she just leaves it. So there's yogurt all over his face, his body, and whatever he's eating, it's everywhere. It's on the floor, it's on the chair. And, that can be, for me, hard at times, but I know that that's her style, and I do it differently if I'm the one feeding him, but
Right.
That's, it's just part of it, and he learns both ways, and I think it's something interesting. One of the things I wish I had known, actually, before getting his clothes all dirty, was how to clean clothes when they're, right when they're fresh. And I used to put it in OxyClean and leave it for a while. I actually ruined a few of them for leaving it inside OxyClean for too long.
Okay, maybe you want to expound on that, because I need to know that trick. Like, why did it ruin it?
So with OxyClean, I just read, put those clothes in a bucket and leave it for a while. But I realized that if I left it for too long, it would ruin the clothes. And I've ruined a few of, Emmett's clothes by putting OxyClean in there. And I think it's more than 24 hours. So if you leave it for a few hours, you should be okay. But I think the product is too harsh if you're leaving it for an extended period of time.
That's so good, because I even read online somewhere like, leave it for 2 days or a week, and it's like a rag after. So.
Yeah, it definitely just, I believe that was the cause of it. But so we've had a few things just torn apart in the wash because we left it in OxyClean.
That sucks.
Yeah.
But I felt like I interrupted your train of thought. So
that was it. It was just a matter of, we have different styles in feeding. I try to keep things not so messy, and learning how to clean the right way and without ruining clothes.
Yeah, that's like the bane of my existence, and I almost wonder when it reaches a certain level of dirtiness, is it even worth it? So do I rush and interrupt the moment? Or like the other day I was giving Buddy some chocolate. I know that was like the one thing our doctor said, like, just avoid sugar. So like, you want some chocolate the same day? Anyway, and he was really loving it, slobbering everywhere, and it was like making this waterfall, this cascade of chocolatey spit on his white and blue shirt, and I was like,
it's always white.
Yeah, I know, no kidding. And I just kind of threw in the towel, and I was telling Phil that I needed to hurry and wash it, and I think it's still just sitting in the pile because you do. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to discount the expense of new clothes, but I think it's difficult to always rush when I'm like, well, he has so many onesies anyway. Mm-hmm. I'm really tired. There's always an excuse. So if that was like, if you could be given anything leaving the hospital, if it was like your baby and one other thing, I would probably choose that. Like, here's how to clean everything manual, you know? Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with the section where we're going to talk to Eden about his experience. I've really looked forward to these episodes. We had episode 4 with Phil talking about his experience as a first-time dad, and now we have Eden, and you can look forward to hearing from Jessica's husband in a few weeks. But first, I want to start out with asking, what did you think when you found out that you and Cody were expecting? And before actually you answer, I know that there's some debate about whether you should say that as a couple you were expecting or your wife was expecting. What do you guys feel? Answer that first. Do you say we were pregnant or my wife is pregnant?
I'm sure I've done both. So I'm not one to be too literal with that kind of thing.
Obviously.
So yeah. I think I've probably said both and haven't even thought twice, so sorry, I can't provide a lot of insight to the question.
That's okay. So when you found out that you guys were expecting, what were some of your first thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess I need to back up with that question in wanting, I guess, to start preparing to have a child. So I always wanted to wait and, be married for a few years before we decided to have kids. And Cody wanted to speed things up a little bit. So we set some goals in the beginning when we got married, and, it was 3 years, and then we decided, to do it 2 years in. And so changing that mentality was something I needed to do because I had a lot to learn. I was still very immature and selfish, and you know how it is with kids. You need to learn a lot and let go a lot of those things. So when I found out, I think I was ready, but in the back of my mind I was still hesitant, so right. I almost, when Cody was doing the pregnancy test, almost thought like, oh man, like that was the first attempt that we had in trying to have kids. Like, it can't be now. That's our first try. Like, I wanted to wait a few more months just to give me that extra preparation. But no, it was the first attempt, and I know that is a huge blessing. I don't deny that. And it was pure excitement and joy when it actually happened, and we knew that it was happening. And we were actually with Cody's family, and so we were able to celebrate together, and it was just a great moment, I think. But in that moment, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh man, it's coming quicker than I thought.
Yeah. So I was there when you did your gender reveal, and that was super exciting. And it was interesting to hear some discussion later from Cody about the behind the scenes kind of commentary, and it's interesting to compare because as a more or less outsider, I'm only saying more or less because I'm literally an outsider in your relationship, but we live really close. So I see some things, but on my perception, it's like the same level of excitement, more or less. And then, I feel like generally in my experience, and probably Jessica and TJ's, but in your guys's or different friends I've observed, the wife's like, the guy's like, this is happening.
Yeah.
Smiley
like,
face.
All right.
So, at the time though, there wasn't anything, it would just seem like we're on the same page, whatever. So in the 20-ish weeks, do you feel like you guys, I don't want to say on the same page because I feel like that implies you had a difference of anything. So I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but do you feel like you guys might have, I guess for lack of a better term, gotten on the same page with your excitement by the time you had your gender reveal? Or was it the whole time maybe a little bit, there were some fluctuations on both sides?
I think from what I can tell, and I've always been weird with expressing my emotions, I guess, but for Cody, it seemed to be different than it was for me, just the entire experience. And I think even until the point to when Emmett was born and we had him, that whole experience was very much different. I don't know if we were ever on the same page of excitement. I was always trying to understand what she was going through and trying to say, oh, that's really awesome. And yes, he kicked, like I was always just a level down, it seemed like, compared to her. But maybe that's just my personality. That's just how I am. I'm very, I guess, in control of my emotions. I don't want to say, the monotone or anything, but that's what it seemed like. But I was on the same page in regards to, okay, it's time, and
Sure.
we're ready for this and we want this. That we got on the same page before we decided to have kids. So that was nice. It wasn't like something that I'm like, oh crap, I regretting in any way.
Right.
But I think in the level of excitement, it was a little bit different the whole time.
Which makes sense. I'm sure this has been discussed many times that it's almost impossible, I suspect, in the best cases or best scenarios, if the man and the woman are on the same page as far as like timing and preparation, all that, I think that there's probably still most times a step down, as you said, like, because you're just not, the baby's not inside you, right? Like there's just different experiences. Yeah. And so best case scenario, I feel like unfortunately that would still be the case. So
yep.
Thanks for sharing about that. So before you got married, did you have a perception of how you would be as a dad?
Yes. So I didn't know anything. Now, looking back, it's a constant learning process, especially with the first child. And so I'm constantly learning every single day. And in the beginning, just like marriage, there's a lot that needs to be communicated, because I believe that you and your spouse will have different expectations. And if you don't talk about those, it could turn into problems. And so I thought that my wife, Cody, just wanted to be a mother since she was a little girl for the longest time. And this was literally her dream. Like, she's talked about wanting to have a baby to hold forever and just keep him and do everything. And so there were times that I almost in my mind said, I don't want to take him away from Cody, because this is what she wants. This is what she's ever dreamed of. When in reality, when you have your own baby, it's not that. The perception of, hey, wanting to have the baby with you at all times, I think is probably not true for most mothers. They need breaks,
Right.
And so that was something that in my mind I thought that I was doing good for her, but she let me know pretty quickly, like, hey, I need more help. I need you to offer to help. I need you to do a lot more. And it was fine. Then I realized, but again, those expectations just needed to be communicated, because I thought I was doing well and I definitely wasn't. And so we've established a lot of other things since that, but it's just knowing, hey, we need to know what's going on.
Sage advice.
Yeah.
What were some of the hardest parts from you? And this can be, it's more or less open-ended, anywhere from prior, but discussing pregnancy through present day.
I think this will probably be brought up in another episode of the podcast, that Cody went through severe clinical anxiety and depression. She developed this antenatal anxiety. So that was by far the hardest thing that not only myself had to go through, but even Cody's mom that was there to help out for a few months.
Just real quick, is antenatal the same as prenatal?
Correct.
Is that, okay, those terms are
prenatal anxiety, correct. And so it was something I've never experienced before in my life. Neither Cody had never experienced. So we both had to learn a lot on what to do and how to keep our baby healthy, or the baby inside Cody's belly. And so it was definitely a hard time. But outside of that, one of the things I wish, and people tell you this all the time, they tell you that parenting is hard and, it's not easy having a child. But I think that in the beginning, I thought in the hospital, like, man, I need to do everything, and this baby is out and I need to hold him at all times and just go 100%. And I realized that I couldn't. I'm like, I'm going to literally fall asleep holding my child and probably drop him.
That's what they say in the hospital. Yeah. Put your child down.
Yeah, if I knew, like, we didn't want to give him to the nurses to go take a nap. We're like, no, like, he has to stay with us. And I will definitely take advantage, I guess, of that, because we both needed it. And at first we just didn't know any better, and we just thought like, this is our responsibility, we have to do it all. But I think getting the help that people are offering was something that we needed to do, and we did over time. But outside of that, let me go on the opposite side and talk about some of the greatest things. I think in the beginning of the pregnancy, it was like blissful almost for both of us. Cody was really enjoying her pregnancy and really happy. Like I said, it was her lifelong dream of having a child and having a family, and everything she ever wanted was part of that. And, she was just really, really happy. And, the saying, if your wife is happy, then obviously, you're going to be happy. And we were very, very happy. And that's probably what you saw, Brittany, in the gender reveal party.
Yeah.
I think we were both at a very good place, and it was just good times before that prenatal anxiety hit on the last trimester.
Yeah.
And then right now, I think both Cody and I are not a big fan of the first few months when they're born.
Oh, of their life, yeah.
Of their life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of hard because they need you for everything. They can't really move, get around, and all they do is, they need full sustenance in every aspect. And so that's hard for both of us because, and I think maybe for a lot of people can relate to that. I think right now it's been an awesome time to interact with him because he enjoys his bath time. He enjoys when we play with him and he can interact and smile and tell us he's upset, or the food that we give him. Just every aspect, I think, is a lot more enjoyable because of the development that they have at this point.
Yeah. Now, you guys are coming up on a year in a few months.
Yep.
Do you have, as a couple or just you, do you have opinions on what to do for the first birthday?
Wow. The first birthday.
Or is this like uncharted territory so you don't know yet?
I am not a planner. So if you're asking if I know what I want to do for his first birthday, I'm sure Cody can answer that.
Okay. All right. We'll ask her, and maybe we'll reveal that in our postpartum.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. We'll find out. So then you said at the beginning you had some opinions, and now you learned pretty quickly what she needs. What would you tell your former self, like right before you had or got pregnant?
Yeah. I mean, there's too much to tell him, I think. I didn't know anything. Like, I've told Cody this several times, that if I had to raise Emmett on my own, maybe I would do all the research and all the things required, but there's a lot of things that she ended up doing or teaching me, and maybe because she went out of her way to learn about them, that I just had no clue about. Small things to feeding, to when to give a bath, when to start brushing teeth, little things that I just, in my day-to-day, don't really think about it. And so there's a lot that I could tell my former self to, like, hey, you gotta get a book or get an app or get something. But I think in general is knowing that it will be hard, but it's like they say, it's rewarding. And so just buckle up, let go. I think I would definitely tell him, like, hey, anything that you want to do when it comes to watching TV or shows, because that's a big thing that I enjoy doing. I'm a big movie buff and all of that. Just let all of that go now, because you're going to have to sacrifice some of those things to enjoy your family and spend more time, because it is all about prioritization. And so I think that we've been able to do that, just kind of let go of some of those things that, as a single person or as a young married couple, we were able to do. But then all of that kind of transitions into giving time to, your baby.
Yeah. So you've talked about transitioning and the time that you give your family. Are there any activities or events that you look forward to particularly?
Yeah, I think right now we're big about doing things as a family. And so it's harder during the winter because we love being out, and so does Emmett, so does Cody. So we have a little dog, and we love just going to a park and playing in the park and just hanging out and being outside, I think, is better than staying inside the house and doing things in there. Outside from that, we try to go to the pool. That's a big one as well. And anything that just gets us out of the house, I think we try to stay active, be outside, because everybody has a good time, and we make memories that way.
Yeah. Is there anything that you don't look forward to? I think stereotypically people have things that they could rattle off when they have girls of what they don't look forward to.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you've thought of, whether it's related to Emmett in particular or just being a parent? Is there anything that you've worried about still?
I think when we consider, having more kids, the hardest part for anyone, I would say, is just sleep, right?
Yeah.
I think losing sleep is critical in anyone's life. And maybe I am, more fortunate to be able to sleep because Cody is the one that has to wake up in the night and feed him. And we have a good routine, and Cody doesn't have to work as well. So she can focus her job, right, full time, taking care of Emmett. And I think in the beginning, when they're so young, that needs to be shared. And so it's a few months of hard work and lack of sleep. So I think, you got to always be prepared for that and won't ever look forward to that, but that's just part of it.
I think that's really great advice. I would say for like any new father, I think that you've given some good advice for recognizing there's going to be some sacrifices that might not last forever,
Yeah.
but also sharing the load. And a lot of couples that I know have arrangements like what you're talking about, where maybe one works and the other one doesn't, and so there's an arrangement made, and you got to do what works for your family. But I like that you said, even sometimes you'll have to share the load at night sometimes, or whatever. The first few months, I mean, definitely Phil and I had something similar. We tried to make it
Routine.
a routine. We had like rotations for time, and it was definitely a big learning curve. And by the time we got it, quote unquote, figured out, they were changing to a new, stage of life anyway. And so it's always changing, always adjusting anyway. But I love that you're just talking about, I don't even want to use the word compromise, but just like meeting in the middle.
Yeah, you have to, just because it requires a lot, and one person can't do it by themselves. You need a help.
Not in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Because we know they're single parents, but it's definitely a strain. No one's going to mask that.
They can.
Right?
It's just very hard.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your thoughts. We really value the support from our husbands, and not only in doing this podcast, but also in raising our children, and we value your time to come over here and share with us some of your thoughts and perspectives. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode, and we're going to go into our recipe section, and Eden actually has a recipe for us today.
So a popular recipe in our home is using spaghetti squash instead of pasta. So we just switch it out, and we can use it with any sauce or protein. We do have one that we typically make, which is kind of like an Alfredo sauce with either bacon or chicken. But the main thing, just to keep it a little bit healthier, is switching out the pasta with spaghetti squash.
Have you noticed if Emmett prefers, I guess, quote unquote, regular pasta over that, or vice versa, or does he like them equally?
At this point, we feed him just about anything. And so as far as we can tell, he doesn't have a preference in that aspect.
That's good. I think that's exposure
Yep.
early on is really good.
Yeah, he doesn't know any better. He just has to eat it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that sounds delicious. Thank you. Be sure to catch our next episode, where we'll talk about reflux and lactose overload. Check us out at our website, partumthemess.com, and on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at partumthemess. And if you like our content and you would like to become our patron and help support the show, go to patreon.com/partumthemess. Join us next week and Partum the Mess.
We're making memories.